What are you expecting?
Well, I expect that Boris will... Well, first of all, he writes his own speeches. This will be Boris in his own words. I've seen him give very reflective speeches, heavy on policy, but I'm sure he will reflect on his time as Prime Minister, but also draw attention to things that he cares about. So making sure that Brexit gets done and fully, that we continue to support Ukraine with the lethal aid and the military aid that we've done. We're the second biggest country in the world after the United States in terms of providing military aid to the Ukrainians, and also other issues, so ensuring that we focus on women's education. I know when he was Foreign Secretary and I spoke to him, that was one of his, and as Prime Minister, one of his big priorities. We also need to recognise, this is not part of a campaign. He's doing something, as you just said, that is for every Prime Minister. But I expect a very thoughtful speech and something that sets out the priorities that he has, and he wants to see the government, fulfil.
I mean, it's interesting, though, because he will be extremely aware that he's in a position as to whatever he says is going to impact the government and put pressure on the government. Now, is he likely, then, to use that to try to pressure Rishi Sunak in a different direction, to try to say, well, this isn't how I would have done things?
Well, I mean, I want to just pick up on one thing. I want to pick on two things. Firstly, I don't think that the move will be divisive, not least amongst the membership, because 90% of the members that were polled by Conservative Post only a couple of months ago wanted to see Boris return as Prime Minister, and that compared incredibly favourably to all comers, including the sitting Prime Minister, who only polled about 5.6%. So the membership certainly wants him back. We need to recognise that. But equally, we need to recognise that we have a sitting Prime Minister, and Boris will want him to deliver. He is, after all, first and foremost a Conservative and wants a successful administration. But he's certainly very keen to set out what he feels very, very, very fiercely about. And I personally predicted that I thought he would return as Prime Minister, because I think he's the best bet. But Boris needs to be coaxed back. He's not demanding to be put back at number 10. We need to encourage him to do that.
Oh, well, that's interesting. Let me put this to you then, because whether you think it's working or not, Rishi Sunak has pursued a sort of steady the ship approach. I mean, obviously, we're looking at some policies which don't seem extremely conservative at the moment, the higher tax burden and all the rest of it. However, any upset now in terms of coaxing Boris Johnson back to number 10, if you could have your way, that's just going to highlight, isn't it, a divided party. That's going to cause so much turmoil that you'd be guaranteed a loss at a next election, wouldn't you?
What divides a party is losing. And Boris is an electoral winner, dynamite. And there's nobody nobody could have won the mayoralty in 2012 when I served in the second term. No one could have beaten Ken Livingstone that time with the polls as they were nationally, except Boris. He's a remarkable politician. That nobody could have secured an 80-seat or whopping 80-seat majority but Boris. We're talking about, if we talk, use the boxing analogy, he's the person that secured that mandate. Frankly, people who understand the mechanics of elections know that the person that the Labour Party fears the most is Boris Johnson. I don't think you want to zero in on divisiveness, but recognise that here's someone with a force for good that will bring real power and electoral clout to bear and gives us our only realistic chance of winning the next general election.
What about the I was going to say accusation, I don't know if that's the right term, really, but certainly the observation that Boris Johnson is someone who's good on rhetoric, excellent on performance, we know that, a very likeable character, but not good on detail. I mean, I was talking to Sir Jake Berry in the last hour, and, he conceded that point.
Well, I worked very closely with Boris for 4 years at City Hall, and I refute that point. I remember one time when he called me into his office and he was trying to draw attention to a particular point of policy detail, and he could pull out his book. He writes everything down in books. I'm sure because he's going to write his memoirs when he's finished with public service. And he could immediately find the name of the person because it's a sort of date-ordered thing. He's got a photographic memory, and I believe it does have huge attention to detail. It's just he's interested in the detail that matters, for goodness sake. When I worked for him as Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime in City Hall, he set out a framework of what he wanted me to do, and he let me get on with it. And that's what you want from your boss. So I worked side by side with him, and I just don't agree with that assessment.